Yeah, we should be chatting live instead of chatting not live.
Yeah, we get pretty good chats in there. Welcome back to my channel. This is Old New Dude with Theories and Tinfoil of a Game of Thrones, and my co-host
Richard York, Asher's trueborn son.
We were talking for a couple of minutes before we turned the camera on. We ran late. They were like, we should actually talk with the camera on.
Yeah.
This is Game of Thrones Jon 2. And these short chapters I love for the simple fact is, if this had been a regular book with a regular chapter, I mean, all of this that we've read so far could have been one chapter, basically. Just for how because I mean, in my book, I'm only on page 76. I got a big book so I can see it. But if you read a chapter that long, it becomes monotonous. I mean, you're just sitting there reading and reading and reading. These short chapters, especially for people like me that have memory problems and short attention spans and all that kind of stuff, because you start throwing words my direction to me fast and I get confused. So I love these short chapters. There's a lot in them still, but you don't feel like you're having to go uphill both ways while you're reading. I mean, it's simple to read a couple of pages, get some information out of it, get an image in your head, and then move on to the next one. If you don't want to read the next one right now, you don't have to, but you've already got to the end of that chapter and been given the information that the writer wanted you to have. So I love the short chapters.
Yeah, me too.
All right, same as normal. Like I told you when we were talking, we're the odd couple. I'm the slob for sure. Your stuff is a little bit more educated and researched than mine. So as usual, we'll go with you start, and then I'll jump in with my stupid stuff.
All right, sounds good. Jon climbed the steps slowly, trying not to think that this might be the last time ever. This feels like Bran saying his goodbyes to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also, I think it's another nod to, I don't think Jon wanted to go. Not nearly as strong as it was hinted at with the alcohol infused take me
right. In the previous chapter, we talked about that, how he's clearly angry at everyone. So the implication is that, the reason he's angry is because he's being sent. Let's be clear, being sent to the Night's Wall. Like Ned said, I'll tell Jon, right? Let him enjoy his childhood, and then I'll tell him.
Yeah.
Right? So,
and then you get the Brandon going, man, he's been mad for the last couple of days, and I don't know why. I mean, he didn't want to go. But I mean, I've heard it said that the first sentence in a chapter tends to be the most important one. I think in this chapter, the first sentence and the last sentence, and when we get to the end, it might make a little bit more sense to you. But I think the importance of this sentence is that Jon didn't want to go.
Well, some people say that you should read the first paragraph and the last paragraph, and at least the first sentence of each paragraph and all the dialogue. That's what I've heard for people who are skimming a book.
Okay. But that might be it.
We're definitely not skimming.
No. All right, go ahead.
So I knew there was a pattern of abuse that was sort of established in this chapter, but wow, I forgot just how many times it sort of hits you over the head with it. I think it's worth discussing that Davos is correct. Most people are mixed. We're all sinners. Ned is an oath breaker and a hypocrite, and I love him. We can acknowledge how flawed Jaime and Theon and Sansa and Catelyn are, and still appreciate them as amazing characters. It's okay if you can't get past their flaws to hate on characters. And in my opinion, nobody should, and I emphasize should, judge you or Gray Area or the Order of the Green Hand or anybody for not being able to look past the very significant sins that some of these characters commit.
Right.
And having said that, there are people who will tell you, that people are reading too much into this one incident. No, it's very clear over and over and over again in this chapter that there's a pattern of abuse, right?
Yeah.
He reached the landing and stood for a long moment, afraid. Ghost nuzzled at his hand. He took courage from that. I put, a boy can only take courage when he's afraid.
Well, it's also another hint to the bond between Wolf and Child.
Right, that they're strengthening them. And the possibility that Dany is developing that bond with the dragon eggs, right? And that's why she has dragon dreams. They seem to make her more brave. And so it's sort of the same thing, right?
Right. Here it's just lightly hinted at, like, you don't think too much of it, but I mean, as the story goes along, for those especially, even Arya at a distance from her wolf, the bond, it allows them to do things that they didn't think they would be able to do. So, I mean, I know the bond goes both ways. You get a little bit of the wolf into the person, or a little bit of the dragon into the girl. Right. But I just love that one little hint is something that's going to be very large later on in the story.
Well, and dire wolves might be on par or smarter than humans, just as people rumor dragons are potentially smarter than humans, right?
Right. And there's also, I don't know if anyone said it or not, or if it's just one of those stupid things that popped in my head. With magic strengthening, people are blaming it on the Red Comet or dragons being born. Well, it could just as easily be dire wolves south of the wall. That is something new that might have an effect on, because they got to be magical creatures, the way they're reacting with these kids.
Right, and we're going to see another example of how incredibly intelligent these dire wolves are, or how well the children are controlling them, or their bonding, or however.
We'll see it later on in this chapter, but it's freaking amazing. Go ahead, man. I got you off topic.
Right. Jon isn't psychic, right? He knows his evil stepmother is likely to verbally abuse him. This indicates there's been a pattern of abuse. It doesn't make gray area, the Order of the Green Hand, misogynistic if they cannot get over this pattern of child abuse, right? I mean, I don't have to. You don't have to love a character if they're a child abuser. You might say, that's a deal breaker for me. That's certainly a reasonable place to draw the line.
Well, like I said, when Jamie pushed Bran, I'm like, that's a deal breaker. He's dead to me. I can't stand this character. And then as I read the story and go along and actually know what happens, we tend to give a pass on the characters that we like.
Right.
On some of the stuff they do.
Right. Make excuses and say, no. Right. Jamie's a good guy. He had to attack Jory in order to ensure that Tywin Lannister would go to war or something. I've heard this argument. I'm like,
you'll bend over backwards defending the people you like, and then you'll just get that shovel and bury the people you don't like.
Right. It's like, no,
you got to be able to
accept the flaws and embrace the good parts, right? But treat them like an onion and cut out the bad part, and
there you go.
Appreciate the good part. Anyway. But be aware, these characters are not perfect. Davos makes the flames come true. He's one of the people that you look at as like one of the most pure in the books, and he's not. I mean, he's more. People will be like, Arthur Dayne was complicit. I'm like, really? People who love Davos will say Arthur Dayne was complicit. I'm like, really? Anyway, Jamie even tells us that. The Mad King was hiding what he was doing from Arthur, but anyway, not once did she leave the room. So Jon had stayed away. Did we mention pattern of abuse? Continuing, but now there was no more time. He stood in the door for a moment, afraid to speak, afraid to come closer. Again, pattern. Anyway, What are you doing here? And then, of course, once he said when he's barely said his goodbye, she goes, "You've said it. Now go away." Part of him wanted only to flee, but he knew that if he did, he might never see Bran again. He took a nervous step into the room. "Please," he said. Something cold moved in her eyes. "I told you to leave," she said. "We don't want you here." Once that would have sent him running. Once that might even have made him cry. Now it only made him angry. So there's definitely a pattern of abuse.
Yeah.
Shall I call the guards? Right. This is this is a fairy tale evil stepmother levels of abuse. Hat tip to Alyssa Patience with her Jon Snow is Snow White video.
Her fairy tales to Song of Ice and Fire are some of the really, really cool videos you can find on YouTube.
Yeah. She was holding one of his hands. It looked like a claw. This was not the Bran he remembered. The flesh had all gone from him. His skin stretched tight over bones like sticks. Under the blanket, his legs bent in ways that made Jon sick. His eyes were sunken deep into black pits, opened, but they saw nothing. The fall had shrunken him somehow. He looked half a leaf, as if the first strong wind would carry him off to his grave.
I love
Man,
that.
there's a lot in there.
You ain't lying. I was thought you was going to stop like after the first sentence and talk about
There's
it.
so much, right?
Yeah, every sentence in this thing has got something in that paragraph.
Yeah, the claw sounds inhuman, and maybe it's supposed to be a squirrel. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you said claw, and then I was reading your email and everything, it never dawned on me this early in the book to think Children of the Forest or Three-Eyed Crow. Because, right. I mean, you got that in the back of my head now, so every time I see something like that, I'm like, okay, that's Three-Eyed Crow stuff there. But you get both in here. You get Three-Eyed Crow and you get the tree.
Right, and he's got bones like sticks, half a leaf, right? So these are sort of weirwood tree symbolism.
And then you got the legs bent in positions like branches.
Right. They're inhuman because he's inhuman, right? He's a leaf, he's sticks, but he's also a claw. And his eyes open, but they saw nothing.
And eventually,
somehow I forgot that. That's kind of an amazing visual.
I got chills talking about this chapter, just to let you know. But later on, he's going to have eyes from the trees that never close, but he's going to see everything. Yep.
Yeah. So it's sort of the opposite, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry I didn't come before. I was afraid. He could feel the tears rolling down his cheeks. Jon no longer cared. And of course, he cares. He no longer cares that he's showing weakness to Catelyn.
Yeah.
And this
is the first time we see a non-adult have tears in their eyes and not leave.
Yep.
All the other chapters, we had tears and somebody left, bolted off.
He would normally be fleeing from Catelyn at this point, but he's not.
Right. You had Jon run off crying. You had Arya running off crying. You had Joffrey run off crying. I think you had Bran run off crying. And now you have Jon, and this is twice when he's talking about tears. This time he did not run off crying. So this is the first time in the book that we get a child, basically, that didn't run off crying. I don't know what it has to do with anything, but I mean, it's just something I noticed.
Yeah. Jon watched her, wary. Her eyes found him. They were full of poison. I need none of your absolution, bastard. And then we again get fingers like the bones of birds. So you're right. It's definitely about him being the crow, basically.
Yeah.
Could that be a hint that Bran is the three-eyed crow? Of course, his name means crow, right?
When I read that, I didn't even know. I mean, just like I said, talking with you on this, I get to hear stuff and things that I didn't know before. And it never dawned on me to that Bran could be the three-eyed crow. And then now, as I read this chapter, after looking at your email and talking to you, damn, that's all I can see. And almost every sentence is, oh my gosh, three-eyed crow, three-eyed crow, three-eyed crow.
That does kind of tie back to his claw earlier. It really does seem like it's a bird claw, right?
Yeah.
The fact that he's referring to it as a bird.
Well, the other paragraph you read, the very next sentence after that is, yet under the frail cage of those shattered ribs, his chest rose and fell. Oh. There's a cage, a bird in a cage type situation.
Yeah.
See what you did? You created a monster. I got to see it everywhere now.
Yeah, no, that's great. Jon, she said, he should have kept going, but she had never called him by his name before. I'm guessing she mostly avoided his name with pronouns and not always saying bastard. Although I doubt this is the first time she called him bastard, right? She's probably has specifically called him bastard before.
I think it all depends on whether if Lord Stark was around on what she called him. I guarantee you she never called him bastard in front of Ned. Because just like the name of Shara Dane, he'd have put a stop to that real quick. Yeah, it's certainly the way that the way you referred to the poison earlier. Yeah.
It should have been you. So this could definitely tie in. I had a typo in my notes here. This could definitely tie into our favorite paragraph, right? This is since the hypothetical is Catelyn as Jaime throwing Jon out the window.
Yeah.
It should have been you. Catelyn saying it should have been you kind of ties into that hypothetical.
Yes.
And then he briefly sees Robb and he says, "You Starks are hard to kill." Jon agreed, and of course, Ned's going to die, and Robb's going to die, and Catelyn's going to temporarily die. Bran and Rickon and even Arya are going to be presumed dead.
Yeah.
So it's clearly some ironic foreshadowing here.
Very.
Robb knew something was wrong. My mother. So Robb is not psychic either. But, Jon was terrified before he went in.
Yeah.
And Robb immediately knows why something would be wrong. He knows that Jon went to see Bran, and he knows why something would be wrong, which is that his mother abuses Jon, right?
Right. And then Jon lies and says she was kind. So
right.
There's that. Can there be can a lie be noble?
Right.
If it's told for the right reasons, and he told the right reasons to spare Robb that, yeah, your mom's was a butt to me type situation. So.
Right. Soon enough, Robb promised. He pulled Jon to him and embraced him fiercely. Farewell, Snow. Jon hugged him back. And you, Stark. Take care of Bran. So the irony of their names being backwards here is kind of delicious if we're right about who's the bastard and who's the trueborn.
There you
go. And then, of course, he goes to see Arya, and the Bravos use swords like this in Pentos and Myr and the other free cities, right? So he's it's interesting that Jon was aware of the Bravos blades, but more importantly, the fact that Arya is suited specifically to the Bravos of Bravos.
Which, I mean, that's some foreshadowing there like crazy. As far as Jon, I just think that's a nod to all the combat and military type of training that these young boys go through with the Master at Arms, that he would have knowledge of how and why they use his swords and what you need to do with it. I mean, the stabbing with the pointy end is like my favorite phrase in this whole book. But I mean,
but he gives her some pretty good advice too. He's like, watch what the other people do, work on your strength. Try and figure out what they're doing, and then when you're in King's Landing, look for people that you can train with.
Right.
It's some pretty good advice. And whatever you do, Arya knew what was coming next. They said it together. Don't tell Sansa.
Yeah.
This is both characterization of Sansa and foreshadowing, right? It's telling us that Sansa's a bit of a gossip, but it's also foreshadowing. And Cersei will tell us that it was a very near thing that the girls almost got away from them.
Right.
But because Sansa came to her, they were able to at least get Sansa as a hostage.
Yeah.
Different roads sometimes lead to the same castle.
I love that line.
Yeah.
Is that meaning that they're all going to meet back at Winterfell, or all going to meet back at?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's foreshadowing that they're all going to meet probably at Winterfell.
I got that down as still the seeds that George R. R. Martin was going to plant for the triangle between Jon, Arya, and Tyrion. I read that line as one of those teeny tiny little seeds for that little triangle that's still in the book, even though he decided not to do it. It was just part of the book already. There's no point in changing it type situation.
Totally possible. I'll spend my first year on the wall emptying chamber pots if I keep Uncle Ben waiting any longer. And a lot of people, of course, say that Uncle Ben is a reference to. Actually, I guess there's a few different Uncle Bens in pop culture that that die as part of the hero's journey. Anyway, I thought maybe that could be foreshadowing for Sam if the show is accurate, right?
God, I hope not. Just something that was said before that. One, you got exactly how strong the bond between Arya and Nim is, for her just pointing at something and then the wolf going to get it and bringing it to her until they're interrupted by Jon and everything. But there was another phrase or a sentence that says, "A proper Southern lady doesn't." When they're talking about
holding her clothes,
proper Southern lady, and is that a hint that eventually she might become a proper Southern lady with the tenfold her and Gendry at Storm's End type situation? Is that one day like a hint that one day she's going to become what she didn't think she could be, because that's not her, that's Sansa.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, he definitely feels like he has left himself open to that, right? With now, whether he intends to actually go there, I don't know, but
yeah.
Does this have a name? Oh, tell me. Can't you guess? Jon teased. Your very favorite thing. Arya seemed puzzled at first. Then it came to her. She was that quick. They said it together. Needle. The memory of her laughter warmed him on the long ride north.
That's the last sentence. And in mine, I got it written down that maybe her laughter and their relationship is stronger or slightly different than we think it is. You know what I mean? Because we already got Jaime and Cersei. So, I mean, you got kids growing up together. But there just seems to be a really, really, really close bond between these two characters. But yeah,
that's certainly true.
The Arya's laughter warmed him on the long ride north is just, to me, is just as important sentence as the first one, which was Jon climbed the steps slowly, trying not to think that this might be the last time ever. I mean, I just think those two sentences have to have some weight to it. I mean, they're definitely they're not there for no reason.
Definitely.
Yeah. These short chapters, I'm loving them.
Yeah. And up next is Dany.
Yeah, those are the chapters I tend to have the hardest time reading, because it's in a different part of the world that we've already been set up to. We're given the rules kind of what Westeros is like, based on kind of medieval type situation. And then you jump to another continent and things are completely different. And they tend to have more words in the Daenerys chapters than anybody else's. So they get kind of long for my brain to stay on track.
Yeah, this one might be the one. I'm not positive, but this one might be the one where she and her horse share a single mind. I'm not sure if this is the one where they kind of drop in some of the Green Seer hints that she might be a Stark.
I want to say it is, because this is the wedding.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe she's just getting the horse as a gift. But even still, she immediately rides like the wind. And at one point she tells us that she's not much of a horseback rider, but then it's literally as soon as she gets on this horse, she's riding like the wind.
Well, telling us that she's not much of a rider, and then you got at the very first one of her chapters, you got Viserys telling her not to smell like this, to get him to wash the stables off of her. So that tells me she's always liked horses, but was never.
You look at her explanation for why she's not a good rider, and she basically says she hasn't had much opportunity.
Right.
She doesn't really. I mean, literally, this is the first time we see her, and she immediately is ready to go full gallop and jump over things and ride like the wind. And
but chances are the 6 months that she spent at Illyrio's is probably the first time she's been able to be around horses and brush them. And I mean, chances are she went in there and helped take care of them just because she's in love with these kind of animals.
Yeah. Well, we should probably save some of this for next week.
Oh yeah. Sorry. You know how I get, man. I just start going. I'll write it all down. We'll talk about it next week.
Sounds good.
Just shoot me a text on when you want to do this chapter next week. Got a long weekend. Everybody take care of yourself. Be safe. This is
out there.
Yeah.
Dangerous out there. There's a lot of areas of the country where they're looking at near near, if not the highest peak net right now, then it's like the second in some parts of the country. It's way up there.
Like yesterday, we had a bad storm system come through North Carolina that spun off quite a few little tornadoes. So you never know what's going to happen. Just stay safe. That's all. I mean, even if you don't think people need you around, there's people that need you around. So take care. Richard, again, thank you for co-hosting this with me.
Pleasure.
This has been Old New Dude with Theories and Temple of Game of Thrones, the reread of Jon 2. My co-host is Richard.
From Asher's Trueborn Son.
There you go. He's smart enough to make a playlist for this stuff. And I'll check the video and then we'll see what happens from that point on. But y'all have a good weekend. Stay safe and take it easy.
You too. Bye.
Thanks. Not letting me hit the button. There we go. Sometimes late at night.